Multi-generational living, what is it? Well, for those of you who don't know, it's basically families living together from different generations. Maybe grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles with their kids and their kids, maybe cousins. It will be different for everybody. So I thought I'd talk about it because people are starting to think more about living together as a family versus heading out at 18 years old like I did. And lots of people have here in the United States especially, because I did notice just talking to different people from around the world where they say they stayed home until much later. Either they got married and then moved out together, or they never moved out. They got married and they moved in with the parents, or they bought a different house and they all moved there. But with the cost of living, it's very difficult, especially right now. Even if you have a job, with the cost of mortgages or rent going up, utilities going up, car insurance going up. There's different reasons that families want to live together. One might be finances. Two, maybe they just like being together. Three, could be maybe health issues. There's many reasons for it. For a lot of young folks and people retiring, they're finding it very difficult to make ends meet. On the other hand, there's people with money, but they really love their family and they want to live together because they enjoy each other's company. And sometimes it's somewhere in the middle, or they just want to have one home and they're traveling, so it's not like everybody's at home all at once. So if you have your own reason why maybe you are living this way, comment below. We'd like to hear different viewpoints. Now, I'm not saying it's for everybody. As a matter of fact, it probably wouldn't work for a lot of people because it takes certain personalities and patience and willingness to communicate and be a team. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of chaos in a family if you don't get along. Some of the things that people can do to get along in a unit like that is, one, make sure that you're communicating. If you're not a great communicator and you're not willing to communicate or willing to compromise, then that's not for you. Living with not just your family, but even roommates. Because you have to look at it too, it's kind of like having roommates, because if grown adult people are moving in with their parents, the parents might feel that it's still their home, their house, because it is their house. So the kids are moving in, but they're grown adults, and especially if they're chipping in or equally dividing the rent, mom and dad, you can't say to the kids, well, it's my roof, my rules, that doesn't work out that way if you want to live together in peace. Let's just come up with a little scenario. You got grandma and grandpa, you got your kid and their spouse and their kids. So, where are you going to live? Are you going to move into mom and dad's, grandpa and grandma's house? Or is everybody going to maybe chip in and buy a house that's bigger where everybody can fit in? So it really depends on everybody's finances. Some people make more than other people. There's some kids making more than the parents made. Maybe the parents are retired and living on a fixed income. So it would depend on if you feel like everything has to be equal financially. Well, if everyone's not making the same amount of money, that's not going to work out. If you're willing to say, you know what, grandma and grandpa, you're retired, but they're still healthy, maybe you could do something, like help babysit or whatever they want to do, what everybody wants to do, because maybe they don't want to babysit, but maybe they would like to cook and clean or do the yard and fix things, be the handyman of the family. So you'd have to come up with how that's going to work because every family's different, and only your family would know what works for each other. I would suggest family meetings once a week. Now, if you're eating dinner together every day, and I don't want to say we're living multi-generational really, but kind of are, and we have dinner, we eat together every day, and we talk about our day. And if something's bothering us, we've always been super open about everything. So if something's bothering us, we let the other person know. Say, hey, you know what? Would you please put the toilet seat down? Or we don't have that issue because we discussed this years ago. So we don't have that problem. Or did somebody put clothes in the laundry? You know, and you can mention that. Say, you know what? I'm always doing the laundry and it's not something I wanted to do. But I tell you, if everybody just takes care of their own things, I'm not saying laundry because you're not going to do a laundry for a towel and your underwear. It's just easier when you could do it together. But you want to, talk to everybody and say, hey, do you want me to throw all this in here and take care of the laundry? And they're like, yeah, would you do that for me? And then maybe the other person's baking a cake for the family and the other person's out cutting grass and the other person is off grocery shopping. So those are the things you have to discuss before moving in and doing that. Now, what I noticed, the reason I was also thinking about this, because here in Tampa Bay area, I noticed there's quite a few houses with the type of homes where you can have like in-law suites or a garage with an apartment above it or behind it, or a little studio in the back of the home, or the house itself has like maybe a hallway down into a separate area, or an attic or a finished basement where you could finish it off, and so the person has the whole floor to themselves. So there's many ways. It all depends on how much everybody has. Maybe one person could buy the house, the one who makes the most, or with best FICO score if they're getting a mortgage, and everyone else can pay rent. But these are the things you have to talk about it beforehand, because what if someone decides to move out? Can you afford that house still without that person? What if grandma and grandpa, it's their time to cross over? Can you afford a house? Is it in your name? This is where I would think a lawyer probably would come in handy to make sure that you have a will, you have power of attorney if somebody needs to do some paperwork for the other person if they're not feeling well. I know that cost besides food and the rent or mortgage and interest rates have gone up through the roof, especially here in Florida. Even car insurance, I'm hearing, is going up. I hope ours doesn't, because it's high enough. But I'm hearing this from around the country. Of course, there are certain places that are much more affordable than certain areas. Some people were saying they did not want to move in with their parents because they didn't want to feel like, oh, it's a kid, I'm going back to my kid's room, I can only do this or that. Because you might want to be going out, you might have a boyfriend, girlfriend, you want to bring them home. Are your parents okay with that? So you have to find out what, and if it's even possible, because maybe some people in the household, they can't tolerate all of that noise, parties happening in the house, drinking and smoking and having a good time to that person. But for the other family member, it might be hell on earth, and they're like, oh my gosh, all this noise at 3 a.m, I need to sleep. And I would say that everybody would have to be easygoing, happy to be with each other, respects each other's issues, if you want to call it that, what they want, because you can't make everybody happy all the time. So we would have to come to some agreement, because if you can't come to an agreement, then it's just not going to work. After our daughter was born, I was so happy to spend 3 weeks with my mom, because she helped me with our firstborn, and I was going through a whole lot, and Rick had started a new job, and boy, it was like a blessing. It was really wonderful. And then we did have our property, and we all lived next to each other. It wasn't quite all in the same house or anything like that, but it was really nice because we were all next door to each other. 4 houses in a row, all family, and the kids were able to go over to, get the grandparents' home and uncle's home and see their cousins and all that. So that was really nice. But when that's different though, because you have your own home. So if a person sells their home, it's not going to uproot everybody else in the house. So if you all are living in one home, that's where the issue comes in. Are you all going to be staying there? And you really don't know. You don't know. And you don't know if one needs to move for a job, or if, like I said, one passes away, and you need to know if you could afford that home, the taxes and the insurance and the upkeep. Upkeep could be very expensive. A new roof, 10, 20,000, depending how big your house is. A new air conditioner, it could be another $10,000-$15,000. Or a well or a septic tank, all these big things. So you have to agree ahead of time who's going to be paying for it. Are you all going to be equally paying for it, or are you going to maybe take a percentage of what the person earns to pay for it? And then I was thinking, then there's, the stove could break, the dishwasher could break, the refrigerator, you might need a new freezer, snow blowers, depending on where you live. We're in here in Florida, so it's different. So it can be very costly to have a home, but can you imagine just doing it on your own? So many of us, or you have your own home and are paying for all of that. And with the way the world is going right now, you're probably thinking it would be nice to have the kids move in with the grandkids, or maybe, like I said, buying a separate house. I was thinking too, like something like a duplex or a little apartment complex, like 4 apartments, maybe buy the building in itself, and each one could have their own unit. The more privacy, the more peace you'll have. So even if you're in a home that doesn't have the in-law suites or extra home in the back above the garage, maybe you could divide the house in some way, maybe putting a curtain or some beads down the hallway entrance, so not to go in that direction. That's your son and daughter-in-law's space. Or maybe the little children have their little toys, so little corner of the room, this is their spot, so they don't trail everything across the house. Say, this is your area. Or if there's a basement, that comes in handy. That's a whole nother floor, and you could turn that into a bedroom and whatever. The tricky thing is the bathrooms. Do you have enough bathrooms? You have to have at least 2 if you're going to have many people. Well, 1.5 anyway. So, but people live without. It just depends on where you are financially, where you live in the country. I'm talking about the United States because that's where we are. But if you're from another country, I would love to hear what your country overall does. Do most young people live at home for years, or do they move out at 18 or 19? I hear it's changing where people are starting to move out sooner, but then the pandemic hit, and then this financial issue is happening with the banks closing. Who knows about bank runs? I know personally I'm very grateful that both our kids are still living with us, because about 4 years ago my health just went downhill, and without them I don't know what I would have done. That's a scary thought. It was very helpful that they were able to take over everything in the house, from cleaning to cooking to making sure I was eating. And with Rick working, I would have been alone at home, and that would have been a problem. And I'm not sure what I would have done in that situation. But one day they may or may not want to head out in different directions. But hoping I could travel again. I think it would be so much fun. And for me, I don't need a whole lot of space. I could live out of my one bag, which we proved in 2017 when we were traveling full time. We lived out of one bag each. I think Rick had the second bag of this camera bag, but basically all our clothes and stuff, one bag each. And it was great. It was like, I don't have to think about all this other stuff. I know that's way outside the box for some of you, and I totally get it, because it depends on what season of life you're in, or what chapter you are in your own life, in your own story. And for us, it was a time to travel, and it showed me that Well, I don't really need a whole lot. I mean, all I need is my little recliner, my laptop, my health, and money, and I'm good to go. So with Rick truck driving, I definitely see how he's able to live out of his truck basically for most of the week, and I see lots of folks living out of their RVs, their vans, their um, boats. Did I say boats? All different ways of living. Then, of course, digital nomad lifestyle has gotten really big since we came back from Europe. And I tell you, I think it's a great thing for anyone who can do that. It's a perfect situation where not everyone in the family is home all at the same time. So if we were to buy a home together, and say Rick's in his truck driving and Willow's off in Europe studying languages and Noah's off doing whatever, it's kind of silly in my mind to have some different homes, like 3 different homes, when nobody's even there, or just one person. So it'd be kind of nice that one person who's there keeps an eye on the house, make sure everything's functioning, and then the next person comes back from wherever, and it works out nicely that way. And I also think everyone needs to be really open-minded, because things always changes. You could always have all these rules in place and saying, you could bring friends over, but make sure they're gone by 11, or stay on this side of the house, or stay in the basement, or stay outside, or you make up these rules ahead of time. But sometimes there's all these gray areas, and you have to change the rules a little bit or bend them a little bit. But you got to be flexible and easygoing and be okay with it, because otherwise people will be running out the door saying see ya, and then you're left with this house and all the payments with it, especially if it's in your name. Lots of communication, very important. And keep in mind, you could do this with apartment living. You don't necessarily have to buy a house. There's plenty of apartments with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, sometimes even with a extra room office space. And they often have, if you get an apartment with a swimming pool, workout. So especially down here in Florida, the weather's always pretty nice. Might be a little hot in the summer, but people go out and about down here. So not everybody's stuck inside. There's plenty of room to go outside, like I said, go swimming, go down to the beach. And then a lot of folks are working remotely, so you could live anywhere. So maybe you find yourself, everyone agrees to a more affordable city or town or state, and find out what everybody wants. I don't know. Are any of you even considering that? Or are you considering even roommates? I thought about Golden Girls. Did any of you used to watch Golden Girls? That was a while ago, so if you're young, maybe just watching reruns. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's funny. But Blanche owned a home in Miami, and she needed to rent it out. So she ended up renting it out to Dorothy and her mother and Rose. And they lived together, and it was a great show because it kind of showed how Blanche owned the home, but she was renting out the rooms, but how they had to negotiate, who's going to be cooking and cleaning, and when there was repairs, and they all came together. That was nice. That was the nice thing about it. And I think the great benefit of families living together, in harmony, of course, is that you get to know each other very well. And especially the little kids getting to know their grandparents or aunts, uncles, or whoever's living there. It's a relationship bond that will never be broken, especially when they're little. They, they become attached to each other, and they learn so much from each other. Older folks have all kinds of wisdom to share, and the young kids are full of information to share with the older folks. And I had made a video yesterday, or the other day, last week already, I lost track of time, where I was talking about homeschooling, and that's definitely where a family that's together could be beneficial. So if mom or dad, who normally would help the kid with the homeschooling, if grandma and grandpa, or like I said, aunts or uncles, whoever is around, they could be of great help, and you don't have to worry about your kid being home alone. But the one thing I would definitely would suggest, this is just my opinion, that if you were to go and buy a house and like everybody's moving in, and I personally would hire a lawyer, especially if you're buying a home together. It's probably a little bit easier if one person's buying the home and then the other family members are renting out. I personally, and this is just my opinion, I personally would get a lawyer to make sure the paperwork is all squared away. Maybe they have ideas that I'm not even thinking about for legal purposes when living together. If you're buying a home together, especially if you're renting out the rooms, are you going to have them sign a contract if it's your home and you want to rent the room out to the family members so everybody can chip into this bigger house? Is there a contract? Do they have to sign a 1-year contract, or are you winging it? If you're winging it, you have to know that you could afford that home if everybody decides to leave, because it very well could happen. You just never know. So those are just some thoughts on multi-generational living, and I think it's a great idea, but I know it could be a very bad idea for some. So let me know what you think, and don't forget to thumbs up, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video.